Hello guys and welcome back to a new video. If you will enjoy it, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments to help me boost this video. Thanks. Story 1. EP calls cops on kids even though she was trespassing. Yes, it is as stupid as it sounds. Back when I was between the ages of 5 and 7, I don't remember exactly, a late IP came over to my house while me and my friend were in my pool when an EP started stuff and called the cops on us. Now for a little backstory. I live in an area where a huge green belt, a large open area of land is. Nothing is there, just grass. So I have an area that sees right into it. And we put our pool up each summer. One day I was in the pool with my friend who's a few years older, and everything was fine until this happened. NC nice cop F friend EP entitled person. Me and F were just playing Marco Polo when some lady EP came over onto my property. And nobody noticed her at the time, until she started randomly yelling at us, saying how we were being too loud, and that if we didn't quiet down she was going to call the cops on us. EP, I can hear you from all the way across the field. It's not a field, BTW. If you do not shut up and be quiet, I will call the police. We weren't even being loud either. Keep in mind, she has to walk roughly half a mile through damp grass and mud to get to my backyard when we weren't even being loud. And me being the snotty brat I was back then, gave her the middle finger at why I did. She didn't like that and attempted to hit me before running off crying like a baby when she couldn't reach me. Cops later ended up showing up at my house stating someone called saying people were running around yelling at and assaulting someone. NC1. We had a call stating 2 kids were chasing a lady around yelling at her and verbally assaulting her. F. That isn't true. We were in the pool when some lady came and told us to be quiet or she would call the cops, but it's private property, and she was trespassing on it. But we weren't even being loud. Thankfully, we had cameras that proved at the time stamped some lady who turned out to be the caller came onto our property. The camera also caught her coming to our property through the green belt just to yell at us. The cop decided to go talk to her. She ended up getting fined for making a false 911 call and was warned for attempting to hit me. My grandma, the owner of the house at the time, was asked if she wanted to press charges on her for trespassing and destroying her flowers. She said no, but that she wants the lady to have to never be near our house again. The lady didn't like that. EP. My dog likes this spot. NC2. That doesn't matter. And that if she returned, she would be arrested for trespassing. Note, we had never seen her nor her dog before, but turns out she lives on the other side of the green belt and saw us playing and wanted to start stuff. Story 2. Partner's grandma feels entitled to violate my boundaries anytime she feels like it. I feel so fucking suffocated at this point. I'm legitimately close to having a mental breakdown. At 31 Fahrenheit started dating my partner 26M a couple years ago, long distance, and recently moved to his country. I spent over $10K on a visa, went back to school here for 9 months to get certified in healthcare work, and am now working full-time. Basically did everything right and by the book. Unfortunately, there's a housing shortage here, and me, him, his mom, and his grandparents were all forced to chip in and move into a house together. It is extremely crowded. As an extreme introvert with severe social anxiety who lived alone for the last 10 years, it's become a nightmare situation for me. But I just grit and bear it because we don't have a choice. I might have been able to stand it if his grandma wasn't completely bombarding me non-stop, incessantly, at all hours of the day. I literally cannot leave my room with a sudden barrage of your milk is expiring in 4 days. Did you notice that it's going to be hot this week? The humidity is going to be 80%. And it's raining on Friday. The humidity is what really gets you. Oh, have you checked the weather? What time is your partner getting home on this random day of the week? Has he gotten his schedule yet? Has he eaten yet? Why don't you cook him something? Is he sleeping? What's he doing? It is fucking endless. And it's 99% of the time shit that does not need to be communicated with me. It's like a nightmare, endless stream of useless thoughts. People have told her nicely to stop. She won't fucking stop. It's gotten to the point that I stay in my bedroom unless I absolutely have to go out because I have such massive anxiety about being totally bombarded the second I leave my room. I can't even wake up and make a coffee in the morning without knowing my social battery is about to be drained to fucking zero immediately. I can clearly not even fully awake and I get completely bombarded, and if I don't respond, she'll just aggressively repeat what she's said until I respond or shame me for not wanting to talk. I have bad anxiety about using the bathroom now too, because the second I go to use it, she'll come through the hall and start doing laundry less than a foot from the bathroom door, and the walls are paper thin. It's like I get to the bathroom and I'm not even sat down yet, but I have to just leave the bathroom for another hour until she's done so I can use it in peace. I feel like an absolute prisoner in my own home. She's also taken to invading our bedroom when we're at work and tidying up, which I am absolutely not okay with. And in my 30 seconds, I'm not related to this woman. I fucking don't want her violating my personal space and going through my belongings. I've also had to buy a lock for my laundry basket because we've asked her several times not to do my laundry when I'm out, but she does it anyway. I absolutely do not want this woman touching my fucking underwear and handling my clothes. Whenever she does that, I put it back in the laundry basket anyway because I have mild OCD and can't wear clothes that some random woman has been handling without my permission. It feels so fucking violating. Multiple people have asked her to stop going into people's rooms, but she feels entitled to because she sees us, an adult couple, as children whose boundaries are just optional for her to respect. All that being said, I've brought up these issues with my partner multiple times, and he refuses to even listen at this point because he sees her as this sweet old lady who's just trying to help. It's like as long as her intentions are good, she's allowed to continuously violate me and my boundaries and push me closer to a mental breakdown. And I'm just not allowed to mention how much it's affecting me because that makes me a negative, ungrateful bitch. The other day she was bombarding everyone the second they woke up, and he mentioned it in the group chat we have with his mum and sister. She did the same to me when I woke up, so I messaged him privately like, yes, she did the same to me when I got up too. And he started going, she's old, give her a break. I told him I'm allowed to be annoyed by someone violating my boundaries, just like he was annoyed this morning too, and he told me you need to stop complaining. It is what it is. Just drop this whole violating your boundaries thing. I don't want to be made to feel like I should have a problem with it when you're the only one who has a problem with it. And then told me just talk to a professional if it's affecting your mental health. I was beyond horrified, and am still horrified that he thinks the solution to my boundaries not being respected is for me to go pay for a therapist to try and get over it, as if the one making me feel so violated in my own home isn't the problem, and the one who has to suck it up and go seek mental health help so that she's free to violate me whenever she wants. It just feels so backwards, and I feel like I can't breathe in this place, my own home, that's supposed to feel like a sanctuary where I can go and be at peace. I haven't felt a single moment of peace since I moved in here, because she never fucking leaves, and she never gives me a moment of space if I leave my room. It is a nightmare at this point. I'm not sure what I'm looking for with this. Maybe just some validation, because I feel like I'm going crazy. Moving out isn't an option either because there just aren't any homes left. They've all been bought up by foreign investors and turned into Airbnbs, and moving back to my home country isn't an option either, because I'm not willing to move back to a country that's just banned abortion and repealed child labor laws. I'm just so close to a breaking point though, and I'm sick of being made out to be the bad guy for desperately asking for the most basic human boundaries to be respected, but this woman feels entitled to just act however she wants with no respect to anyone else in the home, and she gets away with it because her intentions are good. Story 3. They don't respect my school assignments. I'm sure a lot of people who've taken child care class and have had this experience before while carrying a child around with you for a week. My family were a jerk about it, and I was very, very freaked out that I would get a bad grade about this, cause I've heard horror stories about people who took this class and lose grades due to jerks that wanted a good laugh. I was expecting for this part of the class, and this section is carrying a flower babies around for a whole week. For those who might not know what that is, it's basically students are assigned with a bag of flour depending on your luck. You get a healthy 5-pound, overweight 10-pound, or premature 3-pound baby. And then there are times where you will need to take care of 1 or rare 3 babies with you. I was fortunate enough to only have the 5-pound one to carry around, which I'm supposed to care for and treat like a child. I really went into mama bear mode also, since I was basically the go-to babysitter for my younger siblings and cousins, so caring for this wasn't going to be hard, or that's what I believed. I gave my child a hat to wear, and even wrapped it up with an extra sweater I no longer wear. I get extra credit for keeping it warm during the winter. When I walked into my next class, I get the usual whisper and giggle about carrying a bag of flour around, as most child care students would get. So I was extra careful, and basically had it sitting on my lap the whole time, until I had to go to gym class. So I asked my trusted friend Anna to babysit it for me, and I'll come get her afterwards. I get home and immediately my parents are staring at me like I'm carrying a bug in my arms, despite them signing the permission slip to carry it around a week before. Then my grandma says, "What's that?" "Just toss it in the garbage. It's going to leak all over the place." "Neat, this is for my class assignment, and I have to take care of it for a week." Parents, yeah, sure, you're just making things up so you can carry weird things around to fit in with bad people. I just ignore them and head upstairs to my room to do homework. I leave for a bit to eat dinner, and I come back to hear giggling coming from my room. I open to see Molly and Mel, my entitled and spoiled sisters, throwing my flower baby like a ball. I freak out and grab it, telling them that I'm going to lose point for class if it rips, and they'll have to vacuum the carpet. They take off running to tell on me for yelling at them, to which I unsurprisingly get yelled at for getting the stupid assignment too seriously and not letting them throw it around for a bit. Okay, fine, go buy them a bag of flour and let them throw it around, and if the bag explodes covering the carpet with flour, I'm not vacuuming it up. I got an earful for an hour on being respectful to your elders, and don't you dare talk back to me when I was being honest about what my entitled sisters were doing. But a week passed, and I made it through without my child leaking or getting ripped in the process. Not like a time when a bully snatched the flower baby and yeeted it off the second-floor balcony, only for it to land on and exploding on the head of a freshman walking by just below them. The student got a new replacement bag, while bully was suspended for a while. Freshman was traumatized for a while. Story 4. Entitled roommate tries to kick me out of her apartment and make me pay extra for utilities. So this was a few of years ago. At 28 Fahrenheit at the time, met my roommate 28 Fahrenheit on Facebook. We'll call her Brandy in the marketplace section my first mistake. I was struggling to find a place and found this place that was close to my work and within my price range. Brandy had lived in the apartment for a couple of years already and was looking for someone to split the cost of rent since it had gone up. We seemed to hit it off initially, and after seeing the apartment in person, I agreed to co-lease with her and split the cost of utilities. I'm going to be honest, I was 90% sure this would be fine, but that remaining 10% was the part of me saying, it's fine now, but something is slightly off about her. I really should have listened to that 10%. Let me paint you a brief picture of Brandy. She came from a lower upper class family, so she was relatively well off. She was somewhat down to earth, but sometimes her ignorance and entitlement showed through very clearly. One example of her ignorance was when she commented on how the water in her boyfriend's apartment first floor in a building on the bottom of the hill we lived on always seemed to get hotter faster than the hot water in our apartment third floor in a building at the top of the hill we lived on. I kind of shrugged it off until she proceeded to say that it was because it took the hot water longer to travel up to our apartment. I immediately did a double take and asked her to clarify. Did she mean travel from the lower floor in our building to our floor? "Oh," she said, "from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill, where our apartment was." I tried explaining to her that that's not how hot water works, but she kept insisting that it was, so I just dropped it. Once Brandy had made up her mind that she was right, there was absolutely no changing it, no matter how much information you presented. Another time, her boyfriend got her a very lovely arrangement of red, pink, and purple roses for Valentine's Day. Now, if you've ever ordered flowers, especially for Valentine's Day, you'll know that they can get expensive. And this was a very full bouquet, so it must have been easily $100 minus $150. I came home and commented on how beautiful they were and how sweet it was that he got her flowers. She scoffed and said, "Yeah, but they look like the standard cheap arrangement you could get anywhere. I'm making him buy me new ones. I was so shocked. All I could really say was, "Oh," and walk over to my room. So on to the main story I came to tell here. When I moved in, Brandy said she would pay the bills for utilities since they were already in her name and just asked that I Venmo my half to her. She'd send me an itemized breakdown every month in the form of a funds request in Venmo, and I would just pay her my half. I guess, in hindsight, it was a really naive thing to do, but I agreed. So one day, I came home from work when she was getting the internet set up at the apartment. When I moved in, I asked for the password to the WiFi, and she sent me a screenshot of a router with a long generated password, then mentioned she was getting it set up later that week. I thought that was odd, but I thought maybe she was setting up a specific WiFi just for her work. So when the technician gave her the password, I, of course, asked for it. She froze for a moment, like she was contemplating if she should. Then I asked, "Or am I supposed to just use the original one you gave me? Like, is this one separate?" She quickly said, "Yes, just keep using that one." I didn't think anything of it, and agreed. For the next 4 months, I continued to pay my half for the WiFi without another thought. I did think it was strange that sometimes I would plug my Amazon Fire TV into the TV in the living room, and it would buffer a lot, but when she would use her Apple TV, the connection was always smooth. I didn't get an answer until one day my boyfriend, we'll call him Mark, was over. We were hanging out in the living room when my roommate wasn't home and wanted to connect his Nintendo Switch to the WiFi. I gave him the password, and he immediately pointed out that the signal wasn't very strong. He asked where the router was, and I showed him the one she had set up. He told me it wasn't the same router since the picture of the password Brandy had given me was of a Verizon router, and the one in the apartment was Charter. We looked for the Verizon one, but couldn't find it in the apartment, so Mark followed the signal on his Switch until he had full bars. We quickly realized that he had a full signal when he was standing in front of our neighbor's door across the hall from us. I then texted my roommate, pretending I'd lost the screenshot of the WiFi password she'd sent me months ago, and asked for her to send it to me again. Instead, she sent me the login and router details for the Charter WiFi in our apartment. It was confirmed she had been charging me for WiFi for 4 months, and having me steal WiFi from our neighbor, Ben, across the hall. I confronted Brandy about it, and she feigned ignorance, saying that she didn't remember telling me not to use the WiFi in our apartment, even though I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt she had. When I told her that it wasn't fair to me or to Ben that she had done this, she retorted with, "It's fine," then owed me money for something, so it works out. I pointed out that any money issues between her and Ben had nothing to do with me, and that she had lied and stolen $140 from me over the course of the past several months. She insisted that she did nothing wrong, and that she didn't owe me anything. I was afraid that she would try to kick me out, although I wasn't aware at the time that I couldn't be since I had co-signed the lease. I had been homeless for a year prior, struggling to find an apartment in a safe neighborhood I could afford due to my low-paying job. This was the first place that was both in my budget and a safe neighborhood. And at the time, I couldn't move in with my boyfriend because he didn't make much at the time and lived in a shoebox-sized studio apartment. So I let it go and didn't say anything about it for nearly a year. I ended up getting it back when I moved out because, surprise, surprise, we'd had a huge fight, and she told me to move out of her apartment. Okay, I have a lot of people asking for the story of what happened when I finally moved out. So Brandy and I continued living with each other for the next several months. We remained cordial to one another and mostly stayed out of each other's way. This was relatively easy since the last few months I lived there. She practically lived at her boyfriend's apartment down the hill from where our apartment building was. See the hot water story from my original post if you want a good laugh about how she thought plumbing worked. So during the pandemic, I started struggling with the loneliness that comes with social distancing. I was really depressed, and one of the main things keeping me going on days I felt especially lonely was the cat that my roommate had. I've had animals pretty much my whole life, and their company can really fill that empty space for companionship that I need. However, as Brandy started spending more time at her boyfriend's apartment, she started taking the cat with her. Those days were hard, however, because it was her cat and not mine. I never asked her to leave him with me, even though I was really struggling. So I started thinking about getting a cat for myself. I've introduced cats into new spaces and social situations several times before, so I felt confident that I could do that here. I thought it over for a while, because I didn't want to get a new cat only to start going back to work and leave it alone 90% of the time. I also wanted to make sure I was ready for the lifelong commitment that comes with having a pet. So anyways, I decided to get a cat. I approached Brandy to talk it over with her. At first, she seemed open to the prospect, but then suddenly, she wasn't. She told me no as if I were a child asking a parent for something. I was so frustrated because I owned the apartment just as much as she did and had always been more than considerate with her. I approached her to discuss it one more time, and she started telling me how she didn't want another animal in her apartment because her cat already lived there. Here are the reasons she gave. Cats can't share litter boxes, so that's going to be an issue. Anyone who owns cats knows that they can and do all of the time. Well, it's going to scratch up my couch and rug. Her own cat already did that frequently, and she had to put protective covers on the couch. For that reason, I explained that I would be happy to meet her halfway. I'll pay for better quality couch covers than the ones she already had and replace the rug with a different one if she was that concerned about it. Finally, her Hail Mary attempt was, well, the day you bring another cat into this apartment, I'm going to put my couch in storage and you'll have to put something else there if you want to sit in the living room. I calmly explained that I didn't move in with her for the couch. I moved in for a place to live. I told her I'd be fine coming up with an alternative solution for the couch. However, at this point I was not asking her, I was telling her. She was not happy with this and accused me of holding back on telling her I was getting a cat until after we renewed our lease. I explained that I had not decided to get a cat until my job announced that we would all be working from home for at least another 6 months, which was several weeks after we'd renewed our lease. I also told her that even though I wanted to adopt an older cat or a bonded pair, I felt it would be easier to just get one kitten, because kittens are usually easier to introduce into new environments and new cats. I was trying my best to compromise with her. She finally gave in and accepted that I was getting a cat. Surprise, surprise, she did not remove the couch, despite her threats. When I finally found a kitten to take home, I let Brandy know when I'd be taking her home so she would know. I gave her the plan I was following from an online pet journal so she would know how this was going to go. The day arrived and I brought my new kitten home. I brought the kitten into my room, which was ready with toys, food, and a new scratching pad. I left her in there to curiously explore, with my boyfriend supervising. Brandy asked when her cat and mine were going to meet. I reiterated that they weren't meeting that day because my kitten needed a few days to acclimate to the room and recognize it as her safe space. Our roommate practically blew a fuse and started yelling at me that I wasted her time and that I should have explained that. I reminded her that I did explain in my text messages, and that I sent her the plan I was going to follow so she could see it for herself. She said, I'm not going to read all of that text. That's like a novel. It wasn't. It was a few paragraphs. Tops. I told her it was her own fault for not reading it, and that I had done everything I could to prepare her. We had also had a few in-person conversations about it, but apparently she didn't remember those either. She then started yelling at me about how I was a terrible roommate, and how all I did was lock myself in my room with my boyfriend all of the time. And now I'm just going to do that with the kitten, too. She then started complaining about other things I was doing that upset her. She accused me of never cleaning around the apartment. I cleaned my own bathroom, bedroom, and cleaned up after myself in the kitchen. I reminded her that I offered to work on some sort of cleaning schedule with her when I first moved in. However, she had told me she had a certain way she liked things, and that she would just do it all herself. I continually checked in with her while I lived there, but she kept saying not to worry about it. Now, all of a sudden, it was an issue. She then grabbed our full bin of recyclables, picking things out that were mine, and started throwing them on the floor, telling me I never emptied the recyclables. I did, and how I left so much stuff in there, and sometimes that she'd have to make multiple trips down to the dumpster to empty it. I am likely in the wrong for this next comment, but here goes. I told her I never complained when I had to make multiple trips, because of how much alcohol she drank every week, and that I didn't exactly enjoy living with an alcoholic roommate. She's often filled the recycling bin by the end of the week all on her own with just bottles of beer and wine. That did it. She screamed, "I want you out of my apartment." I reminded her that I lived there, too, and she couldn't just kick me out. I told her she treated me like a house guest, not a roommate. We yelled back and forth some more before she finally left the apartment, and I went back to my room. I burst into tears, and my boyfriend comforted me. I no longer felt safe or responsible having a new kitten in the apartment, and to be honest, I wasn't sure if Brandy could kick me out or not. I had never co-signed a lease with someone before. I thought about it all and talked it over with my boyfriend. For the next several hours, his apartment didn't allow animals, so that was a non-starter, and ended up taking the kitten back to the home we had gotten her from. I cried the whole way there. I said goodbye and gave them the pet carrier I had bought to transport her, and so she'd have something familiar to go home in when someone else took her home. I cried for the next few days. She was such a sweet kitten, and I wish I had gotten to know her, but I'm sure she ended up in a much better living situation. I installed a doorknob with a lock and key in my door that weekend, and was the only person with a key. I no longer felt safe in my apartment unless my door was locked. I spent almost all of my time in my bedroom when I wasn't working at the desk in the public space in our dining, living room area. If she was at the apartment, I was usually at my boyfriend's. Finally, I called the apartment complex and asked if Brandy was actually able to remove me from the lease like she had threatened. They confirmed that we co-leased together, meaning that neither could kick the other one out. So at least I still had a place to live. She started being more cold and passive-aggressive. Her next thing was demanding I pay her my half of the security deposit. When I moved in, I immediately asked what my half was, and she said, "I'm probably not getting the security deposit back for this place, so don't worry about it." Now, she was insisting. I told her I would only give it to our apartment complex, because I didn't trust her to not keep the money out of spite, especially considering how she'd handled the issue with the WiFi. She kept insisting I pay her, but I held my ground, and eventually she gave up. I was destructive when I lived there. If anything, her cat was more likely to destroy something. He'd frequently eaten any food I left unsupervised for less than 10 minutes once. He took the thick plastic cover off of a rotisserie chicken that was supposed to last me a week because he wanted it, torn lampshades, and had even torn down a canopy I had installed over my bed twice. She never reimbursed me for any of the damage he did to my property, saying, "I told you I was getting a cat when you moved in. It's your responsibility because you knew this might happen." Yeah, she was a real peach. Finally, I found out that since I was only a co-lease, I could leave whenever without being penalized for it financially from the apartment complex. My boyfriend asked if I would get an apartment with him, and I agreed. We started looking for places, and eventually found somewhere with decent space for the two of us. The first apartment we wanted wasn't ready until the second week of the following month, though, so we went with a better option that compromised for everyone. There was another unit that was available the third week of the month we were in, meaning I would be leaving earlier than I expected. However, it would be easier for Brandy, who was already planning on moving her boyfriend in that same week. I decided not to ask for reimbursement for fourth week of rent because I figured that would be petty. Despite everything that had happened, I just wanted to leave as peacefully as possible and put the whole thing behind me. We got approved for the apartment and began making plans to move. However, do you think it was that easy? No, of course not. Brandy was a menace to live with. The last month I lived there was during a heat wave, and the air conditioning worked well in the rest of the apartment, but not in my room. Maintenance came over multiple times and kept telling me it was fine, but I really couldn't cool down my room without keeping the AC on high. This was absolutely my fault, and I ran up the gas bill very high that month, like 2x what we normally spent. Brandy sent me a text with the bill and was furious. I apologized and took full responsibility. However, she said that because she had spent most of the past month at her boyfriend's apartment, I should pay the full bill. I lost it. I'd put up with this woman's temper tantrums for a full year, and was not about to pay 4x what I normally paid simply because she was acting like a Karen demanding a free 4-course meal because her dish wasn't hot enough. I finally put my foot down and told her no. I told her I would gladly pay for the difference in cost. She'd pay what she would normally pay, and I pay what I would normally pay plus the amount that was over our usual balance. However, she didn't get a free pass on utilities simply because she decided to live at her boyfriend's for a month. What next? I pay for the full rent of the apartment. She told me I was being unreasonable, and that the day I moved out, she would send me one final itemized payment request on Venmo for the full amount of the gas bill, plus all other utilities, and the cost of rent. I shot back with, okay, since we're penny pinching, if you do that, I will send you back the amount you requested, minus the 4 months of WiFi you wrongfully charged me, and never paid back, and the last week of rent I won't be living in the apartment, and I will itemize it so you can see everything. She did not take that well. She told me that was unnecessary, and I added I'd picked an early week to accommodate her boyfriend's move-in date. If she was going to be petty about the whole thing, so was I. We didn't speak even the day that I moved. Me and some friends packed everything up, stuck it in the truck, and were moved into our new place by nightfall. The next morning, I received the faded invoice request from Brandy, and breathed a sigh of relief. She requested only my half of every utility, including the gas bill, and then deducted the cost of the WiFi and my last week of rent. I finally had a win. There is one more little happy ending here. A few weeks prior to the move, a friend got me in touch with a lady who ran a shelter from her home for feral cats and kittens. I offered to donate the toys and food I had bought for the kitten I originally brought home, because it made me so sad to look at them. I ended up donating some extra litter and food as well because I just really love cats. When I went to drop them off, she introduced me to a feral mom cat who had just had a litter of kittens. She offered to let me meet them, and I said yes. She put the runt of the litter, a tiny little tortoise shell, in my arms, who proceeded to crawl up my arm and play in my hair. I was in love instantly. 2 months later, my boyfriend and I brought the tortoise shell kitten and her brother, who has been on and off my lap while I type this out, to their forever home with us at our new apartment. We've been spoiling and with non-stop love and affection ever since. My boyfriend and I are so happy together in our new home. He kind of saved me by suggesting we move in together, and I couldn't be more grateful. I love him, our cats, and my life so much now. It was honestly kind of emotional writing this whole thing out. It was sort of a traumatic experience. But I'm so happy where my life is right now. I haven't spoken with Brandy since I moved out, and honestly, I don't care to. I hope for her sake she's well, and that she grew the fuck up, because dear God almighty, she needs to grow up.